So, season review for the Boks for 2018. Bit of a mixed year under Rassie Erasmus. Still, I guess you feel like at least the first half of his tenure for 2018 was kind of working out where things are, working out which players he wants for 2019 and going forward, and which players are kind of not part of his plans. So there was definitely a fair bit of experimentation. The results perhaps reflect some of that at times. But I still think for the most part, Boks fans will be, if not happy, then at least kind of satisfied that things are going in the right direction. So we'll have a look at the results, some of the stats, some of the players, and what we can look for 2019. So how did the Boks go? They played 14 games. They won 7, lost 7. So a 50-50 split. And there was never a time when they really went on a big streak. They won 1, lost 1, won 2, lost 1, won 1, lost 2, won 2. So it was always, there wasn't a big winning run. The closest to a losing run would have been that final loss to England in the 3-game series, in the third game, which was already a dead rubber. Beat Argentina and then lost their 2 games away to Argentina and Australia. That was kind of the peak point of pressure for Rassie Erasmus, because he'd won from 4, only won 1 of those 4. So at that point, the pressure was at its highest, and he was about to go to New Zealand, which was going to be a sure thing, 3rd loss in a row. But they managed to win that one pretty famously. So, yeah, I mean, you look at these results. The Wales loss over in the USA was, it's a game that I didn't see in full, but I remember the highlights, and I remember all the media reports and all the comments from the guys who did watch it. Apparently, it wasn't a pretty game. I suppose it makes sense that that was the first time Rassie's team had really gotten together, and it was a lot of the guys who weren't probably going to be part of the main squad. So they lost that one. They beat England in those first 2 games. England also were at a pretty low point coming off the Six Nations, so South Africa didn't let the foot off there. They put the first 2 results in the bag. Lost that 3rd game, but as I said, it didn't mean anything for the series. The series was already tied up. They beat Argentina at home, but then lost to Argentina away pretty poorly. Then they lost to Australia away, beat New Zealand at home. So this is what I'm talking about, like, it's up and down. Like Australia having a bad season, you go and lose to them, but then you beat New Zealand, who haven't been beaten apart from the British and Irish Lions at home for a fair while. So, and then following that, they beat Australia at home, but then throw away a game against New Zealand. They could have done the double over New Zealand. Probably should have won that game. And somehow managed to lose it. Whereas that game in Wellington, they were under the pump, but somehow managed to win it. So, I mean, I guess it was painful, but as a game, it was good. It was competitive, and it was encouraging. Then they lost to England away, that controversial one. So just again, when things are starting to look a little bit doomy and gloomy, they beat France, they beat Scotland, and then just as you think it's coming right, they lose to Wales. So no kind of surprise that the overall for and against for Rassie's Springboks, the average points scored over those 14 games, 23.7. Average points conceded, 23.5. So they score as many as they concede. Both of those compared to the other 3 Rugby Championship teams. That's better than Australia for for and against, and Argentina, but not quite as good as the All Blacks. So, yeah, 50-50 on their score and 50-50 in the results. How do they do in all their stats? Run meters, they average 349 meters a game, which is actually the 4th of all the Rugby Championship teams. So not huge on racking up running meters. Possession and territory, kind of 50% and 51%, which puts them 3rd and 2nd. So kind of middle of the road compared to, again, the other 3 Rugby Championship teams. Tackling percentage, they are 82.2%, which is the best of the 4 Rugby Championship teams in terms of that tackling rate. So slightly, very, very slightly higher than the All Blacks. They're also 82 point something. So it's very tight. But I guess it kind of shows with that win over New Zealand in Wellington, they they were tackling their hearts out. They did have the odd kind of game where they fell off, like against Argentina away, they only tackled at 64%, and they wonder why they lost. But some of the other games when they beat Australia at home, they were up at 87. Beat Argentina at home up at 88. So yeah, sometimes very good. For the most part, in the 80s. Very rarely does it drop down below that. Penalties conceded, they're the second best, so they have the third in the number of penalties conceded at 9 penalties a game. Line out is an interesting one because Malcolm Marx has come under a fair bit of flack for his line out throwing, saying that it's like the major weakness in his game. He's like great at the breakdown. He's a strong ball carrier. He can tackle like a demon, and he's at the back of that maul scoring tries, but his line-out throwing is really iffy. South Africa had the best line-out over their 2018 season of the 4 rugby championship teams. That was up at 88.8%. But I did run the numbers from when Marx was starting or when he was on the bench or didn't play. I think it was only one game he was on the bench. But for the games when he started, the line-out throwing percentage was 87.6, and when he didn't start, which was a lot fewer games, but 91%. So the South African line-out actually seems to rise up even a little bit more when he wasn't starting. But again, the sample size for the ones when he wasn't starting is small because he's such a key figure for the Boks. Offloading average of 6.7, so they are the third most offloading team in the Rugby Championship. Argentina are fourth. And goal kicking, interestingly goal kicking, because I thought Pollard had a pretty good year with the boot. 73.5% good enough for fourth. So they're the worst goal kicking team in the Rugby Championship. And it seems to be because there's against Wales, they kicked it 100. That was in America. And then against Australia at home, kicked it 100%. New Zealand at home, 100%. France away 100%, but then there are the ones which aren't, and it's 50% against Wales in Wales, 50% against England in England, 50% against Argentina in Argentina. So when it goes wrong, and each one of those was a loss, when it goes wrong with the boot for South Africa, it tends to go to custard, except for that result against Argentina at home when they kicked it 29% and still managed to get a win. So, yeah, a bit of a mixed bag with that. Key players, kind of to be expected for some of them. Your top run meter getter is Steve Kolisi and Cheslin Colby. These are the guys who, not combined run meters over every game, but were they the number one guy in games? Yes, Kolisi was the number one run meter gainer for the Boks 3 times, and likewise Colby 3 times. So it's kind of surprising to see a forward, but Kolisi is that kind of devastating runner. Defenders beaten, Sia Kolisi. 4 times he was the top Bok defender beater. Around him, Deolende, Esterhuizen, Pollard. Same with meters run. Pollard's also up there. Creel's up there as well. Defensively, top tacklers. Now, when I did the All Blacks video, I said there's not like one focal point or a couple of guys who make all the tackles. For South Africa, it's Pieter-Steph du Toit. Makes all the tackles. 7 times, so half of the games they played, he was the top tackler. He played most of the games. He made most of the tackles. Franco Mostert's up there as well. Likewise, Sia Kolisi, actually, a couple of times it was him. So, yeah, it's kind of a core set of guys who seem to bear the responsibility for a lot of that defensive work. Missed tackles is a bit more of an even spread. A couple of times it was Pollard, 3 times actually. Pieter-Steph du Toit a couple of times, but again, with him, it's just he's making that many. He's bound to have a couple that he falls off. And a bunch of other times it was individuals like Nkosi once, Deante once, Kolisi once, Marx once, Francois Lowe once, so Snyman once. So it's kind of more of an even spread in terms of defensive misses. So yeah, 2019, I think there's still a few questions. There's a few positions where you look at the Boks right now and you go, we've got our number one guy and he's clearly number one, but what do we do if that guy goes down? I'm thinking Malcolm Marx. I'm thinking Faf de Klerk, although Ambrose Papier looked pretty solid up in November compared to like Van Zyl, who didn't look the best. But again, it's only one performance. Yeah, what happens with those guys? If they go down, LaRue was a pretty key man. What happens if Pollard was to go down? Do you put in Yankees as the starting number 10? Because he seems to be regularly in the squad as well. So yeah, there's a few question marks about some of those. Like, you got abundance of locks. Like, you got Diaka, you got Sneeman, you got Etzebeth, you got Mostert. Like, locks is no problem. You could lose your top 2 and still have 2 world-class locks going in there. But other positions, it's a little more hazy. I mean, I would have thought Bongi and Banambi as well. I know he gets a lot of stick, but actually, I think he can do a very good job. I don't see him in against England. He was very good. But then that brings me to the point that there are some guys on the outer, and I'm thinking Aka van der Merwe. Is he done? Is that it? Is he not going to play a part of the plans? Because I mean, he didn't make the November squad at all. The Dupree brothers, all of them, all seem to kind of be on the outer. I think one of them was injured in November, but yeah, they don't seem to be part of the plans. Quokka Smith. Is there any road for these guys to get back in? You'd have to think usually there are some guys that kind of come out of the blue and suddenly make the team and become an essential part of that World Cup squad, but certainly an uphill battle. Who's the best midfield? You got De Linde, Esterhuizen, Creel, perhaps Pollard in at 12 with Yankees at 10. There's a lot of options there. There doesn't seem to be quite yet a settled combination. And then again, just to add things, you're going to have a new coach after the World Cup. So it's certainly going to be an interesting year for the Boks. How would I summarize their season? As, like, please, some consistency. Honestly, it's so, when you look at those results, and it's just like, you could honestly see South Africa, because they're in the pool with New Zealand, they could legitimately beat New Zealand in the pool and then just go on to lose the quarterfinal. That wouldn't surprise me. Or they could lose that quarterfinal, lose to New Zealand, and then go on and do a run and win the whole comp. They're just that team that you really don't know at the moment. But if you're going to win a World Cup, you certainly need to be able to put more than 2 wins together on the trot. And 2018, that wasn't happening. So that's going to need to be the biggest work on for the Boks for this year, now that it is 2019. I would have thought that having had a year under his belt, all those initial teething problems should be sorted, and that will come, I would assume, because that seems to be the way things work. It takes a while to get things settled, all the foundations set up. So hopefully all that work is done, and South Africa kind of going into the World Cup, if not peaking, then pretty close to it. For Rassie overall, though, he's got a pretty long contract to go forward as Director of Rugby, so it's 2023 that he better have all his ducks in a row for, but for the immediate future, we will see how things go. You guys let me know how you thought the Boks win in 2018. Impressive players. I mean, Deante got a Breakthrough Player of the Year, so how good was he? Plenty of stuff going on. Players you perhaps saw too much of that you would like to see on the outer. Can you see any of the Cheetahs or Kings guys getting into the Springboks for the World Cup? Still lots of questions, but you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.